Welcome back once more to a little bit talk about Beyond Legendary in Long War of the Chosen Tet Jam, and my The Good, the Bad and the Ugly video. So I want to talk about some of the features that are added in Beyond Legend and whether or not I personally think, based on my experiences so far, if they are great additions, if they could use some improvement, or if they were bad ideas to begin with. And again, this is my personal opinion. Let me start off with 2 or 3 disclaimers here. First of all, in the background, you're just gonna see some B-roll footage. This is the Cygate mission from the livestream campaign. If I was any good at editing or had prepared any clips, then I could show little clips of what I'm actually talking about. But since I didn't, and I'm not, we're just gonna have the video, and I hope you understand what I'm referring to when I'm gonna talk about the various features of Beyond Legend here. Second of all, and actually the more important disclaimer here would be that this is not meant as an attack or anything like that on the modders. I like modders a lot. The mods for XCOM gave it so much additional replay value, so much additional content, so much additional fun and enjoyment of the game. I wouldn't be playing this game without modders. I have my deepest respect and thanks for the modding community and any modders individually. They're doing all of this for free for us, and it's amazing. And I can't mention that often enough and say thank you often enough, because I think it's just awesome. So that being said, just because it's for free and it's my personal choice to play it, doesn't mean I can't voice my opinion on it. And again, this is not supposed to be an attack on anybody, but really just my thoughts on it. And then that might also then be the reason whether or not I intend to play with this mod pack again in its current form, etc, etc. So, without further ado, let's jump right into it. So, as I said, and as the video title suggests, I've kind of split this up into 3 categories: the good, the bad, and the ugly, with the good editions being just generally good, although not without room for improvement. The bad stuff where it's like, I get the idea, but in the current form that's not good enough, or that's kind of not hitting the mark. And what I call the ugly, where it's like that was a bad idea to begin with, and back to the drawing board, in my opinion. All right, starting off with the good and my favorite addition to the whole mod pack: Pick Your Poison. The Pick Your Poison events. So these are the events that pop up on the strategic layer, where you get 3 choices of buffs to the enemies and you have to pick one. This is, in my opinion, fantastic game design. It has player agency. The player is responsible for picking whatever they think they can handle the most. It's not without flaws, right? So there's the big one where the 3 choices you have should be actual choices and not like a nothing burger and 2 campaign ending choices where you're like, yeah, I guess I'm gonna pick the nothing burger here. So there's definitely might be some balancing passes needed, and there's also a little bit of a localization documentation kind of issue there, where if I'm supposed to make choices, meaningful permanent choices for the campaign, I should be aware of what the choices actually implies. Basically, if one Pick Your Poison event says troopers get this, and another event says troopers get that, and in the first case it's really just troopers, in the second case it's every advent that walks the planet, then that's not really great and not super consistent. Additionally, and this is more a UI thing, it would be nice if I had an interface, an overview or somewhere of all my Pick Your Poison choices that I made during the campaign. That being said, I understand that in terms of modding, you're kind of stuck with what the game gives you, especially in terms of UI things, documentation, etc. So there are just certain limitations you have to work with. But that's something where I'm like, would be nice if we had better UI stuff that supports that. But yeah, in general, I can't say enough how much I really, as much as I every time that the dialog box shows up, I'm like getting a little bit frustrated. But that's a nice way of frustration, and it makes you really then puts you into the state where you have to think about your choice, make some decisions, maybe also look again then to see what kind of things you already picked, and if you want to pile on even more buffs to an already strong enemy, or split it out and make all enemies a little bit stronger. It's some really interesting stuff, and that definitely has my seal of approval. And I'm looking at future games that coming out, and I hope they also will have some sort of similar mechanics, because I think it's just interesting, and we should see more of that. In a way, XCOM 2 kind of had that, when you choose your missions and you will choose which dark event to counter on the free missions, but it always felt like you were in XCOM you're mostly driven by which mission has the best reward, and not so much which dark event am I countering. But that was mostly because the dark events were mostly irrelevant in the game. Anyway, next up on my list here of good additions in Beyond Legend, the Chosen buffs. This is a thing with a very big butt, bigger than your mom's. The buffs, as in the Keystone, Lodestone, Infinity Stone buffs, they collect over time. Like giving the Chosen a little bit more bite, especially late game, making them a bigger threat, I think is good in a mod pack that's specifically aimed at being a higher difficulty than Legend difficulty. So obviously the Chosen, the titular enemies of the mod, need some additions. That being said, once again, well, on the one hand, UI-wise, seeing all the strengths and abilities of the Chosen is a little bit of the pain. You can't see it in the strategy layer. You can only really see it in the F1 interface during the mission when the Chosen is already on the field. So you can't really always prepare for it unless you keep track of it. And the much bigger concern is there's definitely some disparities in terms of strengths. So there's a huge balance pass needed. Like in the YouTube campaign, we had the assassin buff where she basically got to double attack each time she attacked. For every attack she made, then she got a follow-up action where she would either slice again or shotgun again, basically one-shotting every single soldier she would attack most of the time. In the Twitch campaign, at the similar level or at the similar stage of the campaign, the Chosen got like a buff where on paper it said they will take a shot at every single enemy at the end of a turn. Basically, they would cast face off with their use face off with their primary weapon, shooting at every enemy, which first of all wasn't working anyway. So that's a separate issue, I think should actually be working, but more importantly, it's not that big of a deal, because by the end of the turn, they probably don't have that much ammo, so they're not shooting at everybody, and if you're doing this whole strategy of debuffing the enemy and keeping your people in cover and or smoke, then they're just wasting all their ammo, but they're not hitting anyone. The assassin double attack, there's no defense against that, so that's kind of rough. Also then, on a similar vein, what we had in the YouTube campaign with the Hunter getting an extra action, but it was actually 2 extra actions. Again, it's a thing of this is not working as advertised, and also this is way stronger than some of the other stuff. you know, some general balance tweaking and actually making it work the way it's supposed to work, definitely required. But overall, I think given the Chosen a lot more bite is a good approach. Next point on my list here, the unit buffs. So this is mostly actually not so much in Reshi's Beyond Legendary mods, but rather that the original work for that is Templars Beyond Legendary tweaks. And when I'm talking about unit buffs, I'm talking about, you know, basic troopers having more HP and a point of armor, and various perks, or the drones having the zone of control, etc., etc. So all these little buffs where the units you're familiar with get some extra abilities, making them a bigger threat. Again, not everything here is 100% positive. I think some of these buffs are too much or too early. Most importantly, the fire immunity on like medics and priests. I don't think priests should get that at all, because they already get all the mental immunities, giving them also then all the physical fire, acid, poison immunities. Really has a lot of implications when it comes to priest sustain. So you can't just, you know, control them while they go into sustain. As in, yeah, he's sustained, he will get an action next turn, but he's still burning. You know, that's the normal approach, so he can't do much. But no, he's just going to come out of sustain and do something. And unless you have Overwatch with covering fire, there's nothing you can do against it. And then also, again, medic, fire immunity. In addition to that, it's just too early. I would have liked to see that like on the advanced medic or something like that, but not on the early game medic that you find on Force level 2 already. The other big one on the unit changes is all the mutants getting anticipation, and anticipation being such a weird perk that doesn't necessarily work actually the way the description says it works, and I feel like not every mutant needed that, and it's another big nerf on the already hard hit melee classes that are already having a rough time. But overall, you know, there's a lot of new perks that you have to deal with, new problems you have to solve, and especially in the early game, that was kind of it gave the whole game a fresh appeal. You know, you're like relearning the game from the get-go, as you have suddenly a bunch of abilities you have to account for. Alright, next one on my list, and again with a lot of buts here to talk about: additional dark events, and also like the late game dark events. Especially also in Long War for Chosen, some of the late game stuff just doesn't really have the bite to make you scared of these dark events. You know, it's like, oh no, recruits now cost 20 instead of 10 supplies. That is not really a dark event you're scared of. The same thing that applies to some of the other buffs that I already mentioned apply also though to the dark events. There's a general balancing pass needed. It's not a secret that I actually disabled some of the worst offenders in this playthrough and in the Twitch campaign, as in medical embargo and grant embargo, which just flat out disallow the use of medical items and or grenades, rockets, etc. That was just too bad, in my opinion, to leave that in. But there's certainly also other outliers that are just a little bit too impactful. I mean, they should be tough. They should be hard to play around. But overall, a little bit of tweaking might be needed here and there. So, but overall, these 4 items on my good item list definitely gave the whole campaign a really great experience, and I enjoyed it a lot. Now, all of that is now a little bit tainted by what is about to come with the bad and the ugly list. Let's start with the bad. And this is something I already talked about in the class ramble video, the detection range rework. So there is definitely a problem, or was a problem in the game, where if you stack enough detection reduction, your scouts basically have one tile of detection range and can, you know, run circles around Advent without any impunity. Now, the fix was then to remove any detection reduction from light-footed and remove any detection reduction from most of the Advent armors outside of the Hunter, Pathfinder Hunter armor. And this kinda then didn't really solve the issue, because a soldier with Covert and Shadowborn and Ghostwalker will still run circles around Advent, especially if you also give them that Pathfinder Hunter armor that was not nerfed. But other soldier classes that relied on things like light-footed and now had no more option to get any sort of reduction. So it's kind of... It missed the point. It missed the mark, I think, in my opinion. So I think there are other solutions to prevent the stacking of the perks. Again, my suggestion, or my poorly, probably, and quickly thought of suggestion of, yeah, instead of removing the perks, the reduction from the armor, just give the armor the Covert perk, so then it doesn't stack with Covert, but you're not hitting the people that didn't have Covert to begin with. It seems to me like a better solution for that part, but I'm I haven't really thought this through, so maybe I'm missing something that makes that part then not work. Next on my list, Chosen on ambush missions. Having the Chosen show up more than they do in base Long War, where they only show up on retaliations, and basically when you go to their place and wreck their living room, generally a good idea. So I like the Chosen on the HQ assaults. But I don't think the ambush mission is the right approach. It's... yeah, I like it. It's too much of a too big of a swing there. Like, since you have such a small squad and then a small rescue item, and then all is already very map dependent, and additionally, with some of the dark events that add additional enemies to the mission late game, you're already having a rough time on that mission to get through, and the Chosen just then throws everything off. And then, of course, depending on the Chosen buffs that they have, you have even a bigger issue there. On that note, also, since I was talking, going very quickly back to the good items and additional dark events, like the in a way that the Chosen dark events also are kind of part of this thing, where the Chosen activities add some pseudo dark events, again, not documented anywhere, having a big impact. I wish, and I should have noted this down in my list to be a little bit more here in line. I wish those Chosen inspired dark events would always be counterable, as in you always had the counter Chosen activity, covert action available, but then it turns into a second pick your poison, where you cannot counter all 3 of them each month. That, I think, would be one change I would like to see to the Chosen dark events. Okay, that was quickly going back to the good part here of the section and the Chosen buffs. Anyway, back to the bad. Chosen on ambush missions. Don't like it. Didn't like it at all. It really turned on also to the point we saw that in the YouTube campaign, where I completely ignored all covert actions, because ambush missions would not have been viable with the strength of the Chosen on them. So it completely removed covert actions from the game for me, and that it's not the greatest. Since we're talking about covert actions, the next thing on my bat list, the covert action faction logs. Basically, as you do covert actions, some soldiers would sometimes get a buff and a debuff, where they would be locked to only be able to perform covert actions for a specific faction, so skirmishers, Templars, or Reapers. Whenever they got that debuff, they also got a buff that gave them some special ability. Now, I kind of like the idea, but the gameplay implication then felt very lacking. So, on the one hand, you had the buffs that are vastly different in power. The skirmishers got an extra ammo slot. The Reapers got fairly significant infiltration time reduction, and the Templars got like a 5% chance to not die when they take fatal damage. Like these are not even on the same level, right? These free buffs. The bigger implication for me really was that it was completely random whether or not a soldier gets the buff. So somebody would go on one covert action and immediately have the faction log, and another soldier would run 10 missions for the skirmishers and never get the skirmisher faction. Additionally, it makes the already not so great UI for covert action setup even worse as you're looking for the right guys for the right mission. Like just having a little debuff somewhere on the soldier screen makes it really a little bit rough to plan around this whole thing. So for kinda, I see what was going on there and what it's trying to do, but it wasn't really doing it for me. On the other hand, there is something slightly related to this, which I missed that in my good section, and it didn't really come up in the YouTube campaign since we didn't do any chosen strongholds. But there is a similar debuff where a soldier cannot go on a chosen stronghold after they participated in one of these. So if you kill a chosen, you never go into another chosen stronghold, and that's a minor detail I really liked in terms of balance. You have to kind of build 3 squads that are able to kill a chosen and survive the stronghold itself. So nice addition. Again, a little bit, interface implementation kind of problems there, as you would have to look out for the debuff, and even having the debuff doesn't prevent you from sending the soldier on those missions. They will just die at the start of the mission, so could be solved a little bit better, but this is a really good idea. As put it on the good list. Alright, what's next on the bad list though? AI changes. This is a really brief one. So it seems to me, but maybe I'm misremembering from base Long War, but it seemed to me here that things were way more Overwatch spammy. Like a lot of enemies would very often use their second action to Overwatch, to the point where the shield bearers are just overwatching and they're not even using their shields anymore, although allegedly that is a bug in the system right now that is not intended. But yeah, that still a lot of enemies are just sitting back and overwatching, and that really kind of slows down the gameplay. It also makes then units that have shadow step or lightning reflexes much more important. That's some balance implication there, but mostly for me the flow of the mission was a little bit slowed down to a crawl sometimes, because you're constantly, every turn you're dealing with 6 enemies on Overwatch. And it's really then very much a black and white thing, where either you have somebody with shadow step who doesn't care about that thing and just kills these guys, and then this whole it doesn't really pose a threat, right? And the enemies on Overwatch, it just turns it all into a more action only happening on your turn and not so much on the enemy turn kind of gameplay. Alright, last thing on my list of bad items, plasma weapon research cost, and I'm not really sure what alternative I would have. So definitely, so the idea was to slow down the end game a little bit more, and so the research cost of the various plasma weapons, and I also think the final tier of armor has been drastically increased. Why I put it on the bad list is because of the impact it has on some of this. I've talked about this in the class video where, for example, shotgun classes already, having a little bit of a rough time because going in there with all these new perks that the enemies have, making them more dangerous in close range, and all the overwatch that is happening on the field, means you might not be willing to go in there with melee classes to begin with, or maybe you're not building shotgun-based classes at all anymore. And that also then means, because of the increased research times, you're probably not researching plasma shotguns. Or you put them at the very back of your list. So the classes that are already having a rough time now are also the classes that have the worst equipment. So it's kind of, a little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy kind of thing, where it gets impacted. Similar, we had this with the gauntlet classes, where the because of the increased research length, your powered armor, warden armor research comes in later, so that gauntlet classes like Templar, Heretic, what else do we have? The Witch, even the Wrath Commando just get their weapon upgrades way later, and that means they're probably going to get shelved a little bit during the end game as they wait for their final tier gauntlets. I don't know how to fix it though. Like, I get the idea of trying to delay the research, and making it take a little bit longer. I was thinking maybe instead having another filler tag, like how you, after mech weapons, you first have to research Delirium before you get to coil weapons. Maybe after coil weapons, you have to research refined Delirium, and then you can research plasma. So you keep the shorter plasma, the normal plasma research time for the individual weapons, but you just put in a filler tag that takes another 15 days or so to complete, just to delay plasma weapons and final tier armor a little bit more, to make it a little bit more later game tag, that you don't have it that early. I don't know if that's gonna work. I didn't think too much about it. It's just for me I see why you're doing this. I don't think I don't like the implementation. Alright, that's the last on my bad list. Let's come to the ugly list. The things I really don't like, and which are probably part of the reason why I'm not gonna play this mod again anytime soon. I'm not saying ever again, but it's really stuff that's, for me, taking the fun out of the game. We're starting off with the biggest one. Covert actions with trauma and injury chances. Just no. And it's not made better by this all being triggered by a chosen dark event. If you get a counter to that chosen activity, you never have to deal with trauma and injury chances. If the chosen never chooses to initiate that activity, you never have to deal with trauma and injury chances. All very RNG dependent here, but if you end up with trauma and injury chances, well, you're getting a massive setback, because your best soldiers come back with trauma from the missions and are shaken for 28 days, with you having no influence whatsoever on their healing time. Like, it doesn't matter if you, like, if it was just injuries, right, you could still say, okay, I put a scientist into, I prioritize the infirmary, I scan at Templar HQ for faster healing, I put a scientist into the infirmary to speed up healing time. You have options to kind of counteract that a little bit. It still wouldn't like the feature, because it's just a percentage based thing that you can't influence, but at least it's not the complete shit show it is right now. With it being trauma and shaken, and there's nothing you can do to heal shaken soldiers faster. In my first streamed campaign, I literally had, for the first, I want to say 10 covert actions that all had like trauma chances from anywhere from 20 to 50%. Every single one triggered. Every single covert action, one soldier came back shaken for 28 days out of the picture. It's such an, I almost want to say, infuriating way. The game throws just RNG at you that you, again, I don't mind RNG if it's RNG that I have some sort of influence on. Best example being aim RNG. You know, whether your shot hits or not. It depends on your equipment, your positioning, applying debuffs like holo targeting to enemies. There's so many factors that you as a player can influence aim RNG, which is like the quintessence of the game, right? This is you know, rewarding smart play or punishing bad play. But these kind of fixed RNGs that you can't influence in any way, hate it. Absolutely hate it. Alright, next up on the ugly list, the damage scaling. I don't think there's any reason whatsoever why any enemy should be able to hit an XCOM unit for 56 damage. Oddly specific number, I know, but bear with me here. Like this, like, look at the screen right there. This is the tankiest soldier I've ever had with 27 health and like, I don't know, what is that, 8 pips of armor? And it's a shield class. But what's the point of enemy sitting for 56? Like, where's that even going? What's like, I actually would go so far as to say anyone in late game armor and late game equipment should not be one-shottable by any enemy. Just for like, if one-shotting becomes a thing, then what's the point in getting armor upgrades, right? Like if you're one-shotting me anyway, why am I investing into armor, ablative, or vests, or anything like that? Like I might as well go into the mission naked and just go with offensive gear. Like suddenly, if the whole idea is, hey, XCOM is too alpha strikey, as some people always like to bring up, which I kind of disagree with also, you're not getting the alpha strike out of the game by alpha striking back. Like that's not, you're not making a point there. So yeah, that's kind of off the charts. And this is not just that one Mechapede attack that did the 56 damage, but also things like I mentioned before, the Chosen with the double attack, and then some other enemies that just do way more damage than, you know, it feels like the damage numbers were created on paper without looking on what are actually health values that XCOM soldiers have in the late game. You know, what kind of attack damage do I need to do to pose a threat to these soldiers? And I think it's like missed the point by a country mile. Alright, next thing, and this is again something I talked about in the class balance video, the fire balance, especially for our good friends the arsonists, right? You could make an argument that maybe fire feels sometimes too strong in the base game, in base long war. I don't think it does. I don't think, like, you're always giving up something for that. There's always some kind of compromise you have to make. You have plenty of enemies that are already immune to fire. Like having it nerfed even more, having even more enemies immune to fire, nerfing fire applications. It's just, I think it's kind of unnecessary. Alright, and the final thing on my list of the ugly, which is something I wouldn't normally do because I like to, you know, I don't think I wanna criticize something that I haven't actually played, but it's so on my ugly list that I didn't even want to play it, and this is the bounty hunt mission. I don't think a mission where the objective is to kill as many civilians as possible, as I understand it at least, I don't want that in my game. That's really all I want to say about this. Like, this is... I don't know where that idea is coming from. I just really... Just no. Just no. It's all I'm gonna say. Okay, and that concludes my list of the good, the bad, and the ugly for Beyond Legend. I hope I didn't forget anything, and if you're thinking of a BL feature where you're like, hey, you didn't even mention anything about X, Y, or Z, leave a comment down below and I'll try to reply to it as quickly as possible, because I did sit down and make a list here, and I'm looking at my notes, but you know, there's always a chance that I forgot about a little detail, and I'm certainly having lots of opinions on the things there. But yeah, overall, my conclusion is I enjoyed the experience for the most part. Some things kind of soured the experience a little bit. I kind of want to play it again at some point, but not right now. Like, not immediately back to back. You know, we've played 3 almost full campaigns of this now. Time for a change of pace. And on that note, we did start a fresh campaign on the live stream, the close range campaign, where we're mostly doing close range stuff: shotguns, swords, knives, SMGs. We're not attacking from squad side. You know, if we're shooting you, you can see us. That's the idea of that campaign. All right. Yeah, I'm gonna put a cut in here. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.